So what I want to do here now, and this is just kind of basic, and we might fill this in a little bit later with the, the extra details and things. But what I'd like to do events-wise is make our character that we want to show up, and maybe they're just a random, traveler that's just sitting there and resting and taking some breaks and stuff. While I'm talking about that, I'll just fill in some trees here. But I think, in general, it's good to have more life on your map and everything, and anytime you can have characters show up, that's good. So one thing that I would like to look at too is randomizing it a little bit, how they appear, because if you tried my other game at all, you'll know that I like to do that quite a bit with randomizing things, because I think it adds a little bit more of a lifelike quality to the experience, because you don't necessarily know where people are going to be at a given point and point in time, and so maybe they are there one time when you visit, and maybe another time they're not there, and I kind of like how that works, just in general. So we'll look at a way to not only have a character show up that you can talk to and everything, but then we can look at making it so they don't always show up necessarily, or we can do multiple things. So maybe there's one that's there all the time, and and another one that isn't. So that looks pretty okay, I think. I'm gonna just do a little bit more grass up here, just to kind of, again, fill in some of this empty spacing that we see here that looks kind of drab and samey. Maybe let's put some back here a little bit, and then it's surprising when all you're really doing is grass, but it's kind of surprising how much you can really fill in just from doing that. So visually it helps quite a bit. So I actually want this to come back down to the tree and everything, because we don't do enough of that. And again, take your time with yours, make yours look really nice and detailed. Here we're just kind of going through a little bit more briskly than usual, but it already kind of dragged, so I don't want to drag it down even further by sitting here for 2 hours working on details on this map that we're going to be walking through while you guys are trying to follow along and learn stuff. So let's go ahead and make a character here. Maybe they're relaxing on the bench, so we're going to do right click and go to new. Now if we go to image, we can start with all these predefined ones here, and I think that's what we'll do for now. We have actors that we can choose from, and these are all potentially characters that you might get in your party by default and everything. So you may want to use these for your actual party members, but you may not. You can just as easily use them for random characters that you find around in the world, and they're not necessarily going to have to be party members. It's up to you. But I'm going to start just in this people section here. Maybe we'll pick, I don't know who, let's see. This one jumps out to me here. And eventually I'll show off the character generator, and then you can forego using these predefined ones at all if you'd like, because these ones are going to show up in everybody's game, so they'll be kind of recognizable. Everybody that uses the default assets and everything, so it's almost a better idea to use that instead. But just for now, I'll just pick this one. This person looks pretty interesting here, so we'll have this person, this character show up here, and they're just going to be sitting on the bench like that. And maybe we don't want this one to move, and they'll be here the whole time. Whenever the player shows up, so we don't have to worry about movement or any of that. The priority is same as characters. That's what we want, so you can't walk through them or whatever. And to trigger the action button, so yeah, we'll just put a message in here. And maybe this person, let's go to face graphics, because that was the other thing. Most of the characters that you see that not everything has a face graphic, but most of these main ones, they will also have a face graphic to go along with them that more or less matches. So this one was in People 4, I believe, and it looks like this lady right here. So that's her face graphic, so we can go ahead and use that if we want to use that. I think it's kind of a nice way to designate, differences between like internal thoughts, like where you don't use a face graphic, or if you're reading a sign or whatever, you don't use a face graphic. But if you're talking to somebody, then maybe you do want to see, there's the face to go with it. So we'll keep the background at window. The window position can stay at bottom, that's fine. And so this is just maybe a traveling lady that came from the human city or something. And she'll say, hello there. Today's weather sure, whoops, if I type, sure is nice, isn't it? And then, actually I'll just put that on another line. That way it'll fit all in one thing. There we go, that looks a little nicer. So, you can just have casual conversation like this, whatever you want. Now, to show you some other things here that we haven't looked at yet, let's see, I'm trying to think like what exactly one I want to show first. Because what we can do is we can get some, more interesting conversations going than just, these simple ones here. So, let's see. I'm trying to think like what the best way to do, a little bit of randomization here or a little bit of player choice. I think I'll do a player choice. So let's go ahead and do new. Right click, underneath that. So since she's asking a question, in a way, I mean, she's not really asking a question, she's just kind of commenting, but it's something the player could respond to, like today's weather sure is nice, isn't it? And then it's like, maybe you don't like the weather. So if you go up to a new event and then you go to this message section, you'll see the second option here says show choices. So it displays a list of choices in branches handling. So we're going to head and click that. And now here we have the show choices dialog box. Now we can do up to 6 choices by default if we need to. So you could just leave the default things in here, yes and no, or you could get a little bit more detailed. Specific to the conversation and say so I'll just say yes, today's weather is lovely, and then no, or you could say no, I'm more of a fan of the rain. So, or maybe not like strictly no, you could just do something a little bit more. The rainy season. Let's do that. So now it's not strictly a yes, no. It's a yeah, I agree, or maybe not. So yeah, that's how you can change it. And if you wanted more options, if you could have up to 6 different options. And one thing you can do is if you ever need more choices than just the 6, one way that you can handle it is you can do something like for the 6th one, you could do more, or you could do something else, anything like that, where it suggests like you have more choices, and then from inside the 6th choice, like so, if the player chooses the 6th one, from there you can use another dialog box, and then you can add more choices that way. So it won't all display, like the max it will display at one given time is 6, but you can cycle through multiple choice, dialogues basically. And that's one way you can add additional ones. And then usually when you want to do that, like if you have multiples, you'll want to designate one to go back to the previous choices, and then one to go forward to the next set of choices. But and I can show how to do that. That might be something we tackle later on because it involves a different feature. But just FYI, that's one way you can you can go in there and do more choices than 6 if you needed more than 6. But right now we only need 2. So we can change here. Just like with the dialog box colors, we can change the background of the choices as well. So if we wanted to maybe make the background dim for the choices, the contrast, or if you want it to match with whatever you used, you can do it that way. We're just going to leave it at window. Window positions options are left, middle, and right. So by default, it goes to the right side of the screen when you have these choices. And you can try each one that whatever you think looks best. Since these ones are kind of lengthy, it'll go over into the middle anyway. I mean, it's not just like yes or no for the words for your choices, but it's like I'm kind of debating like maybe try it in the middle, but let's just leave it at right for now. So default, it says initial position of the cursor. So if you want, like if the player's just mashing the button and they're like advance the text, by default they'll choose whatever one, so if you wanted the default to be no, then they could, start here. But usually, in most cases, it's up to you, but in most cases, I like to just leave the default choice to 1 and then make the whatever, the number 1 spot choice be whatever I would want for the default response. So, I'd rather tailor the responses rather than change where, this cursor points myself, but it's up to you. Either way will work. It accomplishes the same thing. So now we have cancel here, and it says, whoops, I moved the mouse too quick. It says handling method for when the cancel button is pressed. So when the player chooses to cancel, by default, it's choice number 2. So by default, it'll choose the no option. But if you look in here, you also have other things besides choosing which choice it will pick. You also have this option branch, which if the player chooses no, then it will do, another option. Like, let me see if it actually tells you what that is. No, it doesn't. Okay. And then the main thing that you'll probably want to use is the disallow. So in this case, if you choose disallow, it will make it so when the player presses the cancel button that it doesn't do anything. So they'll have to select a choice out of here. So that's one way to, if you don't want them to accidentally back out of it, then you can do disallow, and then they have to choose and select one. But let me actually just check, because I'm going to just see what branch does really quick. Off the top of my head, I'm not. Let's see, it's this one where it's when cancel. Okay, so when cancel, so branch allows you to, I see, it allows you to do something completely different when the player presses the cancel button. So, so say for example, if you did this, you could say, your response could be yes, today's weather is lovely, or you could say I'm more of a fan of the rainy season, or you can just have cancel do nothing, and it could like stop the conversation, ignore it, so you don't continue the conversation at all. Or maybe if you did that, you could say, when cancel, move the player 1 space, away from this character, and then like they're just going to walk away in the middle of a conversation, and then maybe the character here would come back and say, well, how rude, you're just walking away, you're ignoring me, that sort of thing. So it gives you a completely different option if they happen to press the cancel button. But for this case, I'm just going to leave it at the default of choice number 2, because in this, it doesn't really matter too much. So now you can see here, this is what it will look like. So it says show choices, and then it shows the 2 choices that you picked. In this case, we did not have any additional choices. And then over here on the right, you'll see it shows our specifics. So window is the window style. It's just a regular window, and it's positioned to the right, and there's 2 choices in there. So here we can have the conversation branch in 2 different directions depending on what the player chooses. So this is great if you're making like visual novel style games in RPG Maker, or if you really want all your conversations, or even just like 1 or 2 at specific points, to be very more much more interactive for the player. Like the player gets to choose how to direct the conversations. You're going to want to use a lot of choices to do that, most likely. So all I did up here is I just copied this original one, and I'm going to hit paste on both of these, and then we'll just change, how it displays. Now, one other thing you could do, if you'd like, is have this text repeat. So you say, yes, today's weather is lovely. So as it is right now, it'll just be implied that, you know, that's what the player chose to say. But you can actually repeat the text itself in its own text box and have the player, you know, say either this exact thing, or they could say, yes, today's weather is lovely, the sun is shining, and blah, 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 blah. You know, they could elaborate further, and then, you know, you can do it that way too. But for this, I'll just leave it, you know, because you can imagine that. You just go to new, show text, and then set it up to be your player speaking. So if, you know, if you had it here as actor, you know, by default it's this character. So, you know, anyway, that's how you would do that if you wanted. But we're just going to have her respond, and we'll say the sunshine feels warm and comfortable. This is a really nice place to take a rest. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and just hit OK. And then if you choose, I'm more of a fan of the rainy season, then she can say, oh, that's too bad. The sunshine really is lovely. The rain is nice too, though. So maybe she likes all of it, and she's not so polarized as our character. Anyway, so you get the idea here. We can make a little bit more variety for some of our conversations. And anytime you can add life to the game like that, or just you know, anytime that you can give a player more control using show choices, so like they have, even if it's just something simple like this where it doesn't really matter too much, it's not going to impact the, you know, the story or the game that much, but it does add a little bit, you know, a little bit extra to the experience overall. So so that's how you can do that. And then you can combine that with switches and things to where, you know, if the player responds a certain way, you can turn on a switch and then have more conversations that go later on. There's all kinds of things you can do. It really gets layered. But so that's choices.